Senator DeSaulnier.
Thank you, Madam President. Sort of amazing, I think, for all of us, at least for me. It's amazing to be here and believe very strongly in the President's vision and the Governor's vision when it comes to building a world-class passenger rail system for California and having high-speed rail as one component of that. In the ballot initiative in Ms. Galgiani's statute, there are 4 components to improving passenger rail in California. There's the urban component, there's the commuter component, there's the traditional intercity rail, and then there's high-speed rail. Unfortunately, I think somehow we got in this discussion about the last one, which I think is an important part, but probably the least needed right now. And as Senator Leno said, inevitably, as we get to 60 million people, we will need it, and I believe in it. I find myself here today in an odd position of being absolutely convinced in the rightness of my no vote, but also being absolutely certain that I hope and really feel strongly that I'm wrong about the risk we are taking. And as Senator Simitian said, for those of us who sat in these hearings for so long, for some of us, that's the question. Have we managed the risk to the benefit enough? Is this the way to implement this vision? Senator Vargas spoke eloquently about visionaries in the history of California. This year is the 75th anniversary of the greatest iconic symbol of that, the Golden Gate Bridge. I want to remind people that that was not just a vision, but it was something that was executed right and is timeless. It actually came in on time and under budget. And I will compare that with the current biggest public works project in the history of the state that I am unfortunately all too familiar with, the eastern span of the Bay Bridge, that is currently $5.5 billion over budget. And I bring this up only to assure people that my no vote is not because I am critical of the vision, but as Senator Steinberg has said, this is a rare opportunity. And not to judge anybody by their vote, it's just, I think we all come to this place because of our experience and our perspective. My experience and my perspective says that this is the wrong way and the wrong place to begin to implement this vision. I know that for my colleagues like Senator Rubio, the real vision and the passion for the suffering in the Valley and 25–35% employment is a good reason to start there. However, right now with the risk that we have, that if we approve this, the debt service will start at somewhere between $350 and $380 million. It is said for the first year it will come out from a dedicated source, the wait fee, which is a little under $1 billion right now, but will be exhausted in 2 years, and then it will come under the general fund. And just this last year, we borrowed, quote unquote, $400 million from that dedicated source. That source normally goes to the repair and operations of our existing infrastructure. So as chair of the policy committee, one of the reasons this brings me such a great pause is that money is no longer there for our general operations. The California Transportation Commission is in the process of doing a needs assessment, and that needs assessment says right now in its draft form, we are 300% underfunded for our existing responsibilities for the operations and the maintenance of our existing system. So just the debt service is going to be more of an impact on that. So you weigh that, or I weigh that, against the opportunity to get these federal funds and put them to work on a vision that I believe in. And then, having sat through the last couple of years with Senator Emerson and Senator Alquist of hours of very difficult testimony on sub 3, as we've cut $8 billion to Health and Human Services, I weigh that as well. So that has brought me to this place where I am convinced that for me, I have to be a no vote. And there is risk to that. I acknowledge that. I have had conversations with friends who are in Washington, and they have told me that my position risks us losing that federal grant. Now, I want to particularly thank the Governor and Secretary LaHood for their vision and their engagement. I would like to thank Senator Steinberg for allowing the three of us to engage in this civil and sometimes painful, I know for him, discourse. And I think it's a real comment on this chamber and this House and our ability to talk about the biggest public works project in the history of the state in a way where friends can disagree because their road took them to a different point when they came to make the decision to vote than others. So, as we go forward, I know there is risk to those of us who vote no. If, at the end of the day, there are 21 votes, and this goes ahead, I will go out that door and start working as hard as I can to make sure that the fears that I have that this is the wrong decision won't be realized. If, on the other hand, there are not 21 votes and we get stuck, I would argue that there's a better way to implement this. And we put a good deal of work in the last 14 days. And I want to thank the transportation consultants, particularly Art Bauer, who's been a long and good public servant who knows this as well as anybody in this building, the passenger rail system and the freight system. Now, there is a risk if we don't, as I said, act today, and I'm aware of it. But for me, I have to weigh those risks. And lastly, I'd like to my friends in labor and organized labor who, if it were not for them, I doubt if I would be here. And if it were not for their support and my passion for their belief and the men and women who have made this state, built this state, and often fought this country's wars, that I would not want to be here if it wasn't to advocate for them. So some of them have questioned my loyalty to their belief and their need for jobs. Well, I fear if this goes forward, they won't get the number or the kind of jobs they want because the Valley section will be litigated and it will be delayed, as opposed to putting the revenue in the urban areas. And this is not to take away from the Valley. It's just to make sure that if we invest in projects that are part of the high-speed rail project and are required by the voters and the federal government, my belief, and will bring immediate value and are shovel-ready so they won't be litigated. That's why we came up with a Plan B, and Mr. Bauer and our staff was able to do it in 2 weeks when we were hearing 30 bills every week as we went through that. So, friends, as we all get to this destination or all individual journeys, I just want to thank all of you and be mindful that as we leave here, as monumental a decision as this is, we still have a lot of work to do, because one of the real problems and why we have gotten into this place is that there is an independent authority that has not been responsive to the legislature. And when you make this decision, and again, I think Senator Steinberg, I thank him for the language he put in the bill to make sure that there is more oversight. There is so much more work to be done. And then lastly, I want to thank Senator Lowenthal and Senator Simitian. We happy few who caused all this trouble for some people, and Senator Pavley, who I've spent a lot of time with. I have the utmost respect for how much you engaged and how you handled yourself. And I'm really appreciative that I've gotten to serve with you and this institution, and I personally will miss you a great deal when you leave these chambers.